humanities are a big part of our conversation here, as well as STEM. So welcome everybody. We're going to be talking about empowering students how to learn. What are we going to be talking about today? First, we're going to ask why should we be doing this? Then we're going to jump into 2 highly effective strategies right away. Once we look at those 2 highly effective strategies, we're going to talk about studying versus learning and just how we differentiate those 2 words. That's going to set us up really well to look at Bloom's taxonomy. And finally, we'll be in a great position to look at all of the strategies. And then we're going to wrap up. Where do we go from here? By the way, I don't really have a whole lot to say about where to go from here because I've been doing this just since spring, so don't anticipate a lot. But I do have some things to say. Let's get to it. Why teach students how to learn? So I'm actually going to begin. I was debating on different ways to start this off, but I'm going to begin with a question. And maybe kind of a personal one, maybe a little bit. I'm going to ask you, what goes through your mind when you see the scores after a high stakes assessment? Maybe that first big test or that first big paper. What goes through your mind, particularly for those students who didn't do so well? What sort of thoughts go through you? Now, you don't have to answer. I'm sure everything you're thinking is incredibly positive and constructive. That might not be the case for all instructors, or at least we might be tempted to not think all positive and constructive things. Well, let's just kind of sit on that question. What goes through our head after a high stakes assessment? We see everybody's grades. And I want to ask you, do you ever think this? I wonder if those who failed even knew how. Did they even know how to properly prepare themselves? Do any of you ever actually think that? I wonder if they even knew how to get ready for this test, or how to prepare, invest themselves in this paper, or whatever it was. Did that cross your mind at all?
I have thought, I wonder if the student ever really attended class, especially now with Zoom lessons.
Okay.
And how could the student not know at the end of the semester how to cite an article in MLA format? How could they not know?
Okay. So we're kind of thinking like, are they really taking this seriously? And I mean, there's many reasons why a student might not do well. But I want to just propose that perhaps many of our students, they might not even know how. And I just, if no one else, if not a lot of people are really thinking that, then that's actually perfect. You're playing right into my hands if you've never thought this. I want to propose this. What if specific behavior leading up to an assessment is actually a major influence to performance? What if there's specific behavior leading up to that assessment? Now, of course, there might be many reasons why a student might not do well, and there might be actually many reasons why they do well. But I just want to maybe kind of plant in your mind, what if it's specific behavior in the way that they study before an assessment that has a big influence on their performance? And perhaps if we start thinking like that, maybe, just maybe, in a few weeks or a month or so, when we do have that first big assessment in our fall courses, that question up above might come to mind. I wonder if they even knew how to prepare themselves and what specific behaviors they should have been doing. Phrased a little bit differently, I would like to propose this kind of theory, this like my thesis of my whole talk. Learning is about one's behavior towards the topic. So if learning is about one's behavior, then what is it not? Learning is not necessarily about being smart or not. Maybe learning is not even always about being motivated. I know I've had students that are highly motivated, yet they don't do so well. So maybe it's about their specific behaviors that influences their learning. And what would that mean? If we can change that behavior, or if they change their behavior, then their learning and their grades are going to follow. Okay, again, not about how motivated they are, not necessarily how if they're smart enough for this topic at this point in their life or not. But if we can just change that behavior. So I want to illustrate this, taking a little bit of a risk here. We're going to do this exercise called Count the Vowels. At one point, you are going to need pen and paper. So I'll give you a moment, and I'm going to work on transitioning here. I'm going to share a different screen, but I'll give you guys a moment to grab a pen and paper if you don't have one nearby already. Okay, so what we're going to do in just a second, as you can tell from the title, Count the Vowels, this exercise is so much fun. I'm going to show you guys a bunch of words and phrases, and you're going to, well, count the vowels. It's not going to be a super long list, so I'm not going to give you a whole lot of time. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, which I hope will be enough time to motivate you to move quickly, but also plenty of time if you do that. So let me go ahead. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Let me stop sharing really fast. You won't need your pen and paper quite yet. Okay, okay. Here we go. Your 30 seconds starts now.
In all of the text?
Those words and phrases, count the vowels. Ten seconds left. Okay. Hopefully you had enough time to get through all of them. Maybe, maybe not. How did it go?
Pretty good.
Or can we give you our number? Because
Sure.
I want a grade.
If you want. How many vowels did you guys get?
I got
I got
21 vowels
25.
and 2 Y's.
Oh, a couple of Y's. Okay, okay, okay. Very good.
So if
I
you
have
count
The
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 29.
Oh, 29.
29.
Oh, yeah. Okay, okay. From the English teacher, 29. Okay, now here's what I'd like you to do. If you've got your pen and paper, I would like you to write down the specific words and phrases that you just saw, as many as you can.
Mm.
Can you write down all of those specific words and phrases that you saw a moment ago? How many do you remember?
Not
If
very
you-
many.
I'll give you a little time.
Only the first sentence.
I'll count all of the vowels.
I remember dollar.
I think I remember 2. Dollar, or could we say them? Oh, sorry. I'm
I don't think it's a
breaking
big
all the rules.
deal. I don't think it's a big deal.
Breaking all the rules.
Not an issue.
After the first sentence, I didn't read the words. I just went directly to
Mm.
counting the vowels.
Okay,
Mhm.
interesting, interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, so you probably wrote down as much as you could at this point. So it turns out there were 10 words and phrases. Let me ask you this. So being that there were 10, it would be really easy to give ourselves a grade on how many of those words and phrases we remember. Did anyone pass? Did anyone get 7 or more?
No, no,
Anywhere close to that?
no.
Maybe 2? You get 2? Anybody?
I got 4.
I think I got 3.
3, 4. Wow, that's really good. First time I did this, if I remember correctly, I got about 2. So, well, I'm sorry, you guys, you actually all failed. The best was a 40%. You know what? Since this didn't quite go as well as we were all hoping, I know you guys are highly committed and motivated. So something just went wrong there. I'm going to give you another chance. Okay. In a moment, I'm going to show you those words and phrases again. But I also want to give you a little bit more. It turns out there's actually an underlying pattern behind those words and phrases. So in a second, actually, let me go ahead and just do it now. I'm gonna go ahead and share again. Let's look at it together. Can you see take a moment, can you see the underlying pattern behind those 10 words and phrases? No rush here, no clock ticking. Do you see the pattern? This pattern might lend itself more to math-minded folks.
Yes. It's,
Go
for
ahead
example,
and say it.
dollar
Yeah.
bill helps you buy soda pop. Hand is used to throw the bowling pins. I don't know. It doesn't work for the other
It's
ones.
not quite the pattern I was
Not
thinking.
quite
There
a
might be
pattern.
more than one pattern.
It doesn't
but
work for the other
It's
three.
not that complicated, I'll tell you. And you actually want to go by columns,
Hmm.
not across. Go down the first column and then down the second column.
The only pattern I notice is there are 2 words in the first column and 2 words in the second column. One word, one word, one word, one word. Only the last.
This pattern will really help you with the phrases. It won't be just a 2 and a 1, kind of a 2 words, 1 word.
I see.
Okay, for math folks, what's maybe like just the simplest numerical pattern?
Number of letters.
I've really got your guys' minds turning.
You're thinking way above us.
So the pattern is $1 bill. $1 bill.
Ah, okay. 2 years.
2 ears.
3 years of a tricycle.
3.
Oh, how
5
interesting.
fingers.
4-leaf clover.
Mhm.
5 fingers on a hand. Okay. 6, 7, 8, 9, or used to be anyway. And there are 10 bowling pins.
Oh.
Okay.
I don't think I could have ever thought that.
So what I like to do is give you guys another 30 seconds to memorize these words and phrases now that you know the pattern. And since you're looking at it, we should probably go ahead and get started. I'm going to give you another 30 seconds to memorize these. I'm going to give you the same question at the end. Go ahead and starting now. Memorize as many words and phrases as you can. Ten seconds. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. Now, for the second time, take a moment and write down as many of those words and phrases as you can
In the chat or,
with your pen and paper.
okay.
So it's the same question, it's the same test as earlier. Now, how many can you remember?
Got it. I got all 10.
You got all 10?
Yeah. The pattern that you suggested, now it's easy to remember.
Oh, okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
How'd you do? Normally got all 10?
Yeah. Yep, same words.
Same words.
Mhm.
How would other folks do?
I
8,
got
9, 10?
I got 9.
9, okay. Well, you passed, that's an A. Incredible. Okay, so we saw a big improvement here, right? Failing grades to 100%. Even, and I would bet not only did you know the words and phrases, you might have even written them in the same order that I did, which
Yes.
I didn't even ask you to do.
Wow.
Okay, that's interesting. All right, let's go back to the slides. So what happened here? Let's think about that first experience versus that second experience. Actually, two things that happened. For one, let's get a couple things out of the way. Did we get any smarter that second time we took the test? Were we all of a sudden a lot smarter?
Absolutely.
I would argue no. I would argue
No?
you're really the same. You're the same individual. And when we say smart, like you were just born smart. Were you just, just all of a sudden, did you just multiply brain cells, in those few seconds between tests? I would argue no. Were you more motivated? Were you taking it more seriously all of a sudden?
I would say yes, maybe.
There was more pressure, maybe
More
that second
pressure
time.
and, more pressure, and because you talked about the technique, so that was motivating. Like,
Oh, okay.
Now I know the trick. So
Maybe there's some. I guess I'm thinking of like a student, we might say, you didn't do so well. Like, are you really taking this class seriously? I think you guys were all taking that counting the vowels. I think you were taking counting the vowels pretty seriously. It just happened to be that's not what the test was actually about. Now you might say that I misled you that first time around too, but I did it for a reason. Okay, I wanted to illustrate these points here. Okay, were we any smarter? No. Were we any more motivated? I would say, yeah, little if any. Okay, what was really going on? Were we simply aware of our goal? That second time, you knew what I was going to ask you. You knew I was actually going to ask you about the words and phrases. There was something else too. Not only did you know what the question was going to be, but you were also able to apply a very good, not just good, but a very good learning strategy to get there. We knew that pattern. We thought about it for a while beforehand, and all of a sudden F's turned into 100%.
Absolutely. I felt that understanding the strategy served as a mnemonic device.
We had a learning. Okay. Now you might think, well, how does this relate to our students at all? I mean, I tricked you, right? So what's the deal? Let's think about being aware of goals and learning strategies, maybe as applies to these two very common sorts of assignments. Okay. How might a student interpret read chapter 1? Say, hey guys, tonight, read chapter 1. How might that be interpreted? Would they be aware of the goal, right? What do you mean when you say read chapter 1 as a teacher? I would bet most of us, if we were to sign it, we mean really dive into chapter 1 and understand it. Ask questions about chapter 1. Like, you want to have a level of understanding where you're curious about certain things about it. Apply it to your real experience, right? Think about how it connects to other things that you've learned in other courses, right? That's what we mean when we say read chapter 1. Is that what the way a student interprets read chapter 1? I would bet a lot of students interpret read chapter 1 as let my eyes fall over all the words in chapter 1 while I text with friends and engage in other social media and multitasking of other means, right? That's what they mean. That's how they interpret read chapter 1. Some people, so they're completely unaware of the goal. They just read chapter 1 does not communicate the goal to them. Now, other students do know the goal. They do know they really need to digest it. But do they have a very good learning strategy to accomplish that goal? They might not, even though they know the goal and they're taking it really seriously. How about if we give them the assignment, complete homework problems 1 through 20? What do you mean? A lot of math teachers here. What do you mean when you say complete homework problems 1 through 20? I know I mean really understand the concepts that are there in this homework set. And now they need to come to the surface with specific examples, specific problems, but I really want you to understand the concepts going on there and see connections between concepts and prior things that we learned and all of that. How might a student interpret the assignment, complete homework problems 1 through 20?
Write the answers out of the back of the book and turn it in.
Get the right answers, right? Get the answers correct for numbers 1 through 20. Which might mean to some people just copy them out of the back of the book. It might mean go to Chegg or a tutor, right? I got them right? I completed it. So that's what you said to do. Now, maybe it's somewhere in the middle. Maybe Students know that they're supposed to understand the concepts, but again, do they have a really good learning strategy to get there? It's not just about knowing the goal, but we got to have a means to accomplish the goal too. Okay, so hopefully I've got you kind of interested at this point. Maybe. Here is what I would like us to be thinking about, and maybe even make some progress towards during this flex. These 4 questions. Can we help students recognize the true goals of science? Okay, now sometimes we just need to tell them, you know, and maybe more than once, what's the true goal of this assignment? But maybe there's even things that we can do to, you know, to get them thinking more along those lines. What strategies exist to become very good at meeting those goals? That's most of our talk here. What are the strategies? Then we're going to go even further. Could students even learn to self-assess their current state of learning? Wow. So on the learning spectrum, where am I for this topic? Am I kind of high up? No. Could they even self-assess their current state and know how to progress? It's like we're giving them a map. This is where you are. This is where you want to be. Here's how to get there, right? At the end of the day, kind of putting it all together, can we empower students to own their learning, right? If they can do those top 3 things, I would say that's owning. They are owning their learning now. They can do all of those 3. Okay. So I know one of the rules, kind of the good principles of giving a talk like this is to, what do they say? Under promise and over deliver. Might be messing that up here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're really breaking out here.
Okay. It's garbage day at our house, and the garbage truck, it's actually the recycling truck, and I knew they'd be coming during this talk. I was like, oh man, it's between 2 and 3, they're gonna come. Okay, but you can see what's on the screen. I'm really just reading.
Yeah, you're okay
Yeah,
now.
you're good.
Okay,
You're
I'm
good.
good
No
now.
worry,
Yes.
Ryan. No
Too much
worry.
interference. Okay, great. Can they own their learning? Wow. Okay, great. All right, so let's dive into 2 highly effective strategies. If you don't take away anything else from this talk, these 2 strategies, I mean, they can really do something just on their own. Number 1 is going to be how to get the most out of homework problems. That's more for our math teachers here and other STEM teachers maybe listening. Number 2, getting the most out of reading. And that's going to apply more to our English and our humanities and that sort of thing. Although there's definitely some overlap between these 2 and various disciplines. Let's get into getting the most out of homework problem. What is a highly effective strategy when doing your homework? Okay. Remember the goal. It's to really understand the concepts, right? And so maybe on a test, we give them a problem that's a little bit different than anything else they saw. No problem. They understand the concept really, really well. Here's what I would suggest in bold. Do not, I'm kind of talking to the student at this point, do not use example problems as a guide. Work the problems yourself. Don't have your lecture sitting right next to you and you're just like line by line going down, going down, going down. Okay, I got the answer. You didn't accomplish the goal. You wrote everything down, it's all correct. But there was some deep learning you missed out on if you used an example problem as a guide. Okay, what do I suggest instead? What does it mean to work them yourself? Here's what I would recommend. Spend at least 15 minutes on a given problem without notes, textbook, any other resources, etc. Right? At least 15 minutes, just you and your pencil and your eraser and your calculator, right? And that problem, that's it. You might be thinking, what, 15 minutes? This is going to be a massive waste of time. What if they don't know the first step? Okay, well, you're not just going to stare at the page. That would be a waste of time and it wouldn't accomplish anything. What are they going to do if they get stuck? During stuck time, explore possible approaches. It is okay if those approaches are wrong or if you make mistakes. In fact, you will benefit tremendously from the exploration and from any mistakes that you make. 15 minutes, just you and the problem. I don't know what to do. It's okay, explore. Don't do things that are wrong, right? Or intentionally, right? Do things that are all true, but just explore. And it's okay if you realize later you made a mistake. I like to highlight that with those questions you see in parentheses. Have you ever been stuck on a test? And let's make it easy. Let's just say it's a math test. You ever been stuck on a math test before? I took a lot of math tests and I got stuck quite a bit. Let's say you're taking a test and there's like this one problem that you just can't, you just don't remember how to begin it. You're stuck somewhere, or maybe it's a new problem you haven't seen before, or you just don't remember what to do. Has that ever happened, right? So maybe there's half an hour left on the test and there's this one problem. It's just, what am I going to do with this, right? What did you do? Well, I'll tell you what I would do. Most of the time anyway, I would just start exploring. And I would just start writing things down. And I certainly see a lot of students doing the same thing when it seems like they're not really sure what to do on a test. They just start writing things, and it's going and going and going, and they take up the whole, space on that test, and they go to the next, just overflowing, and they're exploring and exploring and exploring. Now, what's kind of the thinking? Well, maybe I'll get some points out of this. I don't know. Hopefully, maybe I'll get it right. Maybe I'll jog my own memory, and then I can erase all this and do it correctly. Maybe. Why not? I've got this 20, 30 minutes, right, to spend on this test. Maybe I can squeeze out a few more points. There's no loss, right? So what do you do maybe after that test ends? What might that student do? Probably they're gonna have been pretty invested in that problem. I wouldn't surprise me if immediately after the test, they look it up, they talk to somebody, and they say, I'm kind of picturing, this happening on campus, right? And they leave the classroom after the test is over, and they go to somebody they know and they say, I got stuck on, number 4. I just could not figure that out. What? And that other person might say, oh, you were supposed to start it like this or like that, or remember this formula, and say, oh my gosh, yes, of course. How could I forget that? Right? Has this ever happened to any of you guys on tests?
All the time.
Okay. All right. Oh, I can't believe that I didn't remember to do that. Right. Now, here's what happens. Do you think that student is going to forget that experience anytime soon? There was such a commitment to that problem for a good length of time. There was emotion. They were invested in that problem. When they hear the answer, that's going to stick, right? They're not going to forget that by the time the final comes, right? They're going to remember this type of problem. Why not create that same atmosphere when there's nothing at stake? You're doing homework. It doesn't matter if you get it wrong. This isn't the test. Don't let the test be what reveals what you really know and you really don't when you're on your own. You can create that experience with homework. Okay, but you're not going to go forever and ever. Obviously, I'd say 15 minutes is plenty of time to do a lot of really, really good exploration. Maybe you're really in the zone and you want to keep going further, but I'd say if after 15 minutes, if you're still stuck, then look to an example problem, right? But for the next step only, whatever that is. Maybe it's the first step or maybe it's not, but just get the next step only. Then spend at least 5 more minutes exploring from that point forward. And keep doing that until you get the answer. Now you might be looking at me like, Ryan, you're crazy, and this would just take way too long to do homework. I mean, if they got stuck on every problem for 15 minutes and then 5 minutes, that would just take forever. Even if it did take a long time, and I'd argue there are good reasons to think it wouldn't maybe take all that much longer, but even if it did, there's not a wasted second in that homework experience. There is some deep, deep comprehension and learning happening while they are stuck and while they're exploring. Even if they're making mistakes and doing the wrong approach, there is deep learning happening. Now you might take kind of the summary kind of there at the bottom. Treat each homework problem like it's a test question. Go at it on your own. Now, what might really happen in reality, right? So if a student did this for the first problem and they were stuck, they spent the 15 minutes, and they've already been to lecture, they've seen these problems before, right? It's not like it's brand new, it's out of nowhere. But they're stuck, they don't know what to do. They spend the 15 minutes, maybe it takes them half an hour to get that first problem. It could. When they go to the second problem, do you think it's always going to take like that next half an hour? To do that second? Probably not. They really would have gotten a lot out of that first problem. They're probably going to know how to start the second problem on their own. I think the chances are really good. Now they might get to another set of problems that are a little bit different, and then the cycle might repeat itself. But let me tell you, even if that happens, there is no wasted time here. They are really, really, really invested. Okay. Also, when you read this, these things can be modified. You might say, well, what if they look at that first problem and the student realizes, oh, there's this formula that I just don't remember off the top of my head, and I know I need that formula, or there's a special technique. I know there's a special technique, and I'm never going to explore and find it. There's just a special thing, and I really need to look that up to get anywhere. I know that. Is it okay if on the very first problem I look up that formula or that technique to just kind of get me going, and then I just go from it? Of course. Is your learning going to be destroyed? If you modify it like that a little bit for the first one? No, of course. But then when you get to the second problem, then maybe go back to this and do it completely on your own. Now you know the formula, you know that technique. So things can be modified. But man, if you think, hey, it's just me and this problem for the vast majority of your homework questions, wow. You guys ever get students who say, you know what, that test, it didn't cover anything that was in the homework. It wasn't like the homework at all. You ever get students say anything like that?
Yes.
Or there were a few questions that were not anything like what we did in homework?
Yeah,
Yes.
once in a while we hear it, yes.
You're like, well, like, what was your goal when you were doing homework? If it was just to get the right answers, like I was trying
Yes.
to, we were pushing you a little bit, right? But if your goal was to get the concept, then those other questions that weren't all that familiar would have been okay. I'll get students that even say there are homework problems that weren't like your lecture. You never cover this type of problem in your lecture. Like, well, yeah, that was the point, right? I assigned that problem because I want you to understand the concept, right? Not that you're just copying line by line. Okay, so this is huge. If students in math or in STEM in general just take this one principle, wow, this can change your world. Let's go to the next one, getting the most out of reading. So it's kind of a 3-step process. How can we get the most out of reading? I would highly recommend any type of media read, and this could go to STEM or non-STEM. Preview, start with a preview, 5 minutes. Don't take 5 minutes, nothing more, or it could be less. What do you want to do in that preview? Okay, you're going to skim. You're going to skim, paying close attention to headings, bold-faced words, and summaries. Things like that, right? Now, when you see a bold-faced word, when you're doing your preview or your skim, are you going to look up the definitions to those words? No, you are not going to look up those definitions. You're just going to see, hey, okay, there's a word that I should know, and I don't know what it means, but I'll come later. I'm just getting a preview. Okay, what if you're not reading something that's more like a STEM textbook? Maybe it's like something like a novel, right? How do we preview a novel? Read the first line of every paragraph. It might be the full sentence. It might not be of every paragraph, but just read the first line of every paragraph. Like, what's the point of that? What is that going to do for you? Your brain likes to have a big picture and then to fill in the gaps. Give your brain this skeleton, this big picture of what's happening with this topic, or even with the story if it's a novel. You're going to do the full reading later and you're going to fill those in. But if you give yourself that frame, that really, really helps you to your learning comprehension, your reading comprehension. Okay, number 2, you're still not going to get into the reading just yet. Again, that was 5 minutes. Now you're going to take 2 minutes to ask questions, okay? From the preview, right? You just did your preview. Write down a few simple questions. And when I mean simple, I mean bottom level question. You barely know anything from that preview. You just get this framework, okay? So I'll give you a couple examples. So what might be a few simple questions? Maybe you are taking astronomy. I don't know. I took astronomy in community college. So maybe in a particular chapter, it talks about black holes. And in the same chapter, it talks about pulsars. Okay, but I'm not going to look up those definitions. Maybe a question might be, what is the difference between a black hole and a quasar or a pulsar? Right? Do they have anything in common? And that's just a natural question, not knowing anything about, just seeing the words, right? What's the difference between a black hole and a pulsar? Maybe if you're reading something like a novel, maybe when you did your preview, it was pretty clear at one point that a certain character got very angry. I don't know. You might say, hey, why, bottom level question, why did this character get angry? Who were they angry with? Is this going to be resolved? Are they going to be not so angry, by the end of the chapter? Okay, why ask these questions? What's the point of this? Your brain needs to have a reason to do things. If you just tell your brain, hey, I need to read this, and there's not really anything behind that, it's going to be really difficult. It's not a motivation issue. It's just, it's going to be difficult to make sense of what's happening. Okay. You want to give yourself a reason that taps into genuine curiosity. You came up with these questions. Nobody else did, right? And so, hey, now we're going to find the answers when we actually do the reading. The genuine curiosity when it comes to learning is big, big, big.
Is that the ice cream truck?
Yes.
That's what it sounds
It's
like.
popular in my neighborhood.
Interesting
Oh, Ryan,
neighborhood,
you live in
Ryan.
an active neighborhood. There's a lot of parties on Friday afternoon.
Yeah, they're providing a lot of background music
Cycling.
for your presentation.
The ice cream truck always goes by, usually during my son's nap. Not that it always wakes him up, but ice cream. Okay. No, we can't get ice cream. You're about to have a nap. Okay, so finally, now we're going to do the full reading. Okay, and this is where, this is kind of the big one. There's definitely a parallel here between the homework problems, paraphrasing. All right, so when you sit down to do the full reading, you're going to read the first paragraph only. This could go for like a STEM kind of a reading, or it could go for a novel. Okay, read just the first paragraph. Stop. One paragraph at a time. Stop right there. Paraphrase that paragraph in your own words. Maybe you can do it in one sentence. I don't know. Now, read the second paragraph. Stop. This time, paraphrase all that you have read from the start. Everything between those first and second paragraphs. Now you're going to paraphrase all of it. And you're going to continue like that, paraphrasing one paragraph at a time until you get to the very end of the reading. Now, again, you're probably thinking to yourself, this is going to take forever. Can't they just read it and be done in 30 minutes? If they do all this paraphrasing, I mean, who knows how long this could take? Sure, progress is slow. However, there is deep comprehension that occurs. There's one element. When they get to the end of that reading, they're going to know this passage or this chapter, whatever it is, really, 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 really well. There's more than that. By doing this paraphrasing technique, by the time as they are progressing, although it's slow, you are always moving forward. What do I mean by that? You ever start reading something and it's okay for about the first minute, and then in that second minute you start daydreaming? Has that ever happened to you?
Mhm, yes.
And you're reading the words are going through your mind, but you realize, wow, I was just thinking about something else, and now I gotta backtrack, maybe even to the very beginning and start all over again. That's not going to happen with this paraphrasing technique. It's always going to be forward. Another thing, what if it's a particularly long passage and you don't really feel like you have enough time to get through it all in one sitting, right? So you read a little bit and then you take a break, and maybe it's later or maybe it's the next day that you finish it. Are you going to have to really look back and start from the beginning again or review again? No, or if you do, it's going to be really fast. If you're doing this paraphrasing, then to catch yourself back up, you might not need to do it at all. If you do, you can just read your own paraphrases, or maybe even just the very last paraphrase. And then you're completely caught up. It's in your own words, right? You processed it, and you continue from there. It might be, now I don't teach where there's a lot of reading or novels or things like that, but I've heard that this technique, students actually finish faster than traditional, just sit down and read, even add in the preview and the questions, all of it together. They actually get through the reading faster, and not only that, but there's some really, really serious comprehension, deep level comprehension that happens. What do you think is going to happen when you show up in class after this reading and your teacher starts asking questions about the reading? Are you going to remember certain things if you do it this way? I think you will. I think you really, really will. So it's an idea, and I would say if there's a lot of reading in a particular course, this is an excellent technique. Okay. So those are really probably the two most effective things that we can share with our students, however they apply to us. Let's move on with our talk. Let's talk about how we interpret studying versus learning. How would you guys, what's the difference between some of you guys here? How do you differentiate between the word study and learn? What does studying mean to you versus what does learning mean to you? And take a moment or so, but I'm curious what some of the people here think. You can even put it in the chat or you can share aloud.
I would say learning is like going deeper into it. So things not just for the moment, but it sticks, and that you will totally imbibe in yourself. Whereas studying more will be, for example, like studying for the exams. So I do well on the exam, not
Okay.
going that deep, just for the purpose of, for example, just passing the exam kind of thing.
So learning is more like a long-term kind of,
Long-term, right.
and
Long-term,
studying is
bigger
more like, I need to
picture,
do well on this
yeah,
test.
sticking.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Anybody think of it differently or even the same?
I'm typing in the chat my response.
Okay.
I think that learning is acquiring an understanding of a process, of the mechanics
So
in
process,
a process.
mechanics.
Like in
Ooh, I like that.
history, like in history, and if you understand the root causes of revolutions, you can understand that this is, it's a deeper understanding. It's not memorizing dates and places.
Okay. Studying, we end up tying with memorization.
However, we need studying in order to understand the processes.
Both are necessary. 100% agree, and they play off each other even.
Right.
I see them super intertwined, because and I'm trying to think of something non-academic. So this past year I decided to learn how to row, and I did have to do some studying. There was some things that would be like technique things, like how to hold them, how to put the oars in correctly so they don't fall out, those kinds of things. And so that requires some studying because you have to do it kind of repetitively.
There's a mechanics, yes.
Right, exactly. But I was learning to row. That was part of learning how to row.
Okay, very interesting. So Lenore shared in the chat, learning is understanding a process, the dynamics in sociology or history, but studying is necessary to understand. Studying is necessary to understand the processes. Okay, so studying is kind of like going to that deeper level. Okay, cool. Here's another question. In which mode do you think students spend more of their time? Do you think students spend more time studying or more time learning?
I think studying.
More time studying?
Yeah, I think majority of the students, they don't even stop for a moment and even think about the difference between study and learning. So
I had neither.
I don't think
not either.
pay attention to that there's a difference between the two.
Okay, and I'll admit, until about December of last year, I didn't either. I think you're absolutely right. And I asked this very question to my own students. I started that last spring. What's the difference? And they say things very similar to what you guys shared. But when I asked them, well, how do you spend more of your time? And they say, well, studying. So here are a couple of responses that I've gotten from students. And I think they highlight the way students receive this. There's kind of a contrast between the way maybe what we shared together. Here's what one student said, a calculus student of mine from just this last summer. The student said, learning is a concept where the topic is first taught to you. For example, in-class lecture would be considered as learning. Students have a tendency to think that learning happens in the classroom only. No wonder they spend more of their time studying, because they don't think of anything outside the classroom as learning. Okay, then the student went on to say, studying would be considered as going back through your work and through your notes. Sounds like looking back through, these are good things, do these things. But they're not thinking of it as learning, they're thinking of it as studying. Okay. Next is from a statistics student from last spring. You kind of see the same theme. When it comes to academics, learning is associated with a classroom setting. Now, that might not necessarily just be lecture, right? There might be group work and things, but that's it, classroom, that's all. Studying takes a longer time, has more commitment, and requires self-discipline and motivation. Wow, studying sure sounds like a lot of fun to this person. Long time, right? These things are true, but just there's nothing positive. Long time, commitment, discipline. Okay. Again, sounds like they, in classroom, right, lecture, or maybe some group work, that's learning because it's new, it's brand new. But homework is no longer learning. It's just studying. And I think we have that tendency to tie studying with memorization. And I think that's a big problem. Now, even more, this student went on, that stat student went on to say, when not in an academic setting, learning involves curiosity and can open up new opportunities. Now, I 100% agree that learning should be a genuine curiosity, open up new opportunities. That sounds fun, that's exciting. But when not in an academic setting, so in real life, learning is a lot of fun. But in school, it's just about listening or whatever we do in the classroom, and that's it. Then it's time to study. Oh, wow, okay. Now, a lot of other students, like I said, shared different things, a lot more similar to what we did, yet they would still say they all, almost every student that I can even remember always said they did more studying than learning. So here's how I see a breakdown in communication. This is my vision here on the left of studying versus learning and where they play, the roles they play. And on the right, the all too common student vision of studying versus learning. Now, maybe you guys agree or disagree with my vision, but I think of going through your academics or a particular class, it's like building a skyscraper. Okay. So you need a foundation to your skyscraper, right? That's your prerequisites. Okay, can't argue with that. But learning is the building itself, right? We're gonna build this thing one floor at a time. Go in, we're gonna do all the little details of all the little floors, right? So learning to me is about your preview, it's your questions, it's your reading. It is definitely lecture, but it's also homework. If you have any papers, right, you're still learning, right? There's curiosity, there's new opportunities, you're exploring, right? Exploration. Completing projects, right? We have statistics projects, a lot of us who teach stats. And there's a lot of exploration and curiosity that goes on there. Reflecting on your prior assessments, right? On a previous quiz or something like that, you're learning from it. Studying, and I think we heard this a little bit from what you guys shared, and it's true for me, studying is like that antenna on the top of the building. This is how we peak right before a test. I really want to shoot that up as high as I can because I need to be at my absolute best when I sit down to take that test, right? If I wasn't going to take a test, I'd probably be perfectly content with my building because it looks pretty good. But if I want to be at absolute pinnacle, then I'm gonna build that spire, right, that antenna. I tend to think, or I've seen evidence that students see it a lot more like this, and they don't quite make it as far. So they got the prereqs, right? They got that foundation, but then learning is simply lecture. And then they go home and they study. So that's their reading, that's their homework, that's their papers, that's their exam review. Now you might think, well, okay, what is really the big deal? Study versus learn, they're just words, okay? True, however, think about what those students just said about studying. Those were not all the most positive things. And then they said, but when we're not in school, it's about curiosity. It's about new opportunities, right? So I think there's this connection that we have between studying and just brute, hard work, right? And memorization. And, like you're practicing your rowing technique, right? If that was all there was to learning how to row, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun, right? Just practice the thing. But there's so much more to learning how to row and it's worth it to do that little bit to do some of that studying. And so, yeah, I think, and there's only so high we can build the antenna, right? We can't build the antenna all the way to the top. It's not going to be supported by how much building there is. It doesn't work like that. So I definitely see that that there's something lost in translation here. Now, the thing is, when things are lost in translation, just like if students misinterpret goals, you know, when there's when there's a loss in translation, like both parties have an equal role that they played, or some kind of roles that they played that, you know, that wasn't communicated well. So I'm certainly not blaming any students. I think we can do a better job at communicating this to them. Some students, you know, a lot of these learning techniques and things they've just been able to pick up on, you know, intuitively over the years at some point or another. And other students, you know, just for whatever reason, to no fault of their own, they did not pick up on these sort of techniques and this thinking. And, you know, we have to say, well, nobody really even broke it down for any of them, just some were kind of more fortunate than others. And so a big part of this is, hey, can we get on the same page with students? What we think of as a goal, what we think of as learning, can we communicate that effectively? And then maybe we can even do more than just communicate to. Okay, so that's what I had to say about studying versus learning. We're now going to move on to Bloom's taxonomy. Now, Bloom's taxonomy, if you've never seen this, then you're in good company. I never saw this until December of last year myself, and I've been teaching, you know, at this point, well over 10 years. You know, this might be foundational, or like, you know, if you were studying education, this might be like, you know, education 101, but I never taken anything like that. I never heard of this. This is how students can get their roadmap. Where am I on the learning spectrum and where do I want to be? And then we'll show them how to get there. Okay, so the Bloom's taxonomy they came up with this in the 1950s. The pyramid depicts the ascending levels of thinking as we learn. So I won't read all of the details here. I really just want to point out different stages of learning, or the levels. And there's some intertwinedness, of course, that goes on, but the bottom level of learning is memorization, just remembering things. Then we get into the understand level, then we start applying, analyzing, evaluating, and finally at the top, where we know something so well, we're able to create an original work of ourselves. Now, I think most students realize that they can't do well in a course, certainly not an A, if all they do is memorize. I think most students get that. However, I do think studying often tends to kind of fall back to memorization. Students probably, you know, if they get to the understand level, they are really understanding what they're doing and why they're doing it. Many students probably feel like that's the top. Hey, I understand what I'm doing and what I'm doing in these concepts. What else is there to learning? And we say, oh, there's application problems, or maybe there's even application writing. Go, oh, wow, you're really pushing it here. You know, application problems are tough, and application, even writing, might be very difficult. But certainly, if we understand the apply level, then I would think a student would tend to believe they've reached the top. They're only halfway there. There are all these other levels of learning that, you know, they can push into and really heighten their whole experience. So what is the analyze level? That's where we get into determining arrangement components, right? The logic that's behind a concept is analysis. The evaluate level, justifying a standard decision, right? Supporting or opposing different viewpoints. Now you're actually able to have a really interesting dialogue with somebody else who doesn't have the same viewpoint as you when you evaluate. And finally, creation, where they might come up with an original work of their own. This pyramid has also been so helpful for me in designing assignments. So I might say, you know what? I've really been kind of stuck at the understand and apply levels myself when I create, say, a test. I would like to create assignments where I push students into the analyze level. They have to uncover some logic or determine the components, something like that. I might even want to push them into some of these higher levels. In statistics, a lot of us, we have students, they have these big projects and they're actually creating. They're designing the final project, they're designing the questions, and they're going out and collecting data, right? There's some good creation going on there. And there's going to be some good evaluation and analysis if they're up here that they're just going to have to get through. But even in other subjects, I'm starting to realize ooh, this question or this type of assignment is really pushing them into some of these higher levels, and they kind of need help to get there. But certainly a student could just look at this and say, you know what, I think I'm at the understand level. I would really like to be at the analyze level. This is actually something I started asking my own students. Where are you on this pyramid for our course? And where do you want to be? So this is a really, really helpful tool to understand where you are. And then we don't know how to progress at this point, but certainly we can look to see. So I'm curious, have other people here, have you guys seen Bloom's taxonomy before in anything that you've done?
Yeah, I had seen it before for many years.
Oh, for many years. Okay.
I had too. I had seen it too, because that is as an example that I apply to my students. I use with my students to help them understand the difference between remembering something and understanding it. And then most of their assignments are aimed at creating something new based on components of other sources.
That's excellent.
So I learned that when I was doing my master's at UCSD.
Wow. Okay. Now here's the next question. Do you show your students Bloom's taxonomy?
I have not.
I've shown it during the workshops that I used to give
Yes.
for my departments.
Yeah, I remember those.
Only
Oh,
during
yeah.
those workshops, but
Okay. Well,
I
hey,
don't think I've shown it in class. But now I'm thinking, well, maybe it's a good idea to show it in class as well, because not very many people come for the workshop.
sure. I mean, and yeah, I mean, I think just knowing like, ooh, you know what? I really thought apply was the pinnacle of learning. No, maybe it's not. And it makes sense. Like, why are they asking us to do this? That sounds so hard. Like, oh, they're trying to push us into some of these higher levels of thinking, you know. Okay, awesome. So then the question becomes, if this is our map, well, then how do we actually go up the pyramid? How does a student move higher on Bloom's taxonomy? So I've got 4 recommendations. For one, I would say stay in learn mode. At least the way that I think of learn mode, I think of study mode as like that test prep. Like I'm gonna peak, okay? I'm really gonna go for it. Learning, again, it's about just having that genuine curiosity, and you know, painting a big picture and then filling in the gaps. And right, there's other techniques to go with that. But even kind of what those students were saying, like don't fall into the, oh, this takes so much discipline and motivation. I mean, yes, but it's not all, you know, this brutally hard, right? Stay curious. Right? Number 2, they really need to recognize the true goals of assignments that we talked about earlier. If they don't understand the true goal, there's just no way they're going to be able to climb levels of this pyramid, right? Because they're always going to be taking the shortcut. I mean, and that's just not going to get you anywhere. Beyond that, 3, know where they are on the pyramid. If a student can know where they are, well, that's the first step in climbing it, right? Where am I now? For the course in general, and I would say even for specific topics, what level am I at? Okay, now how do I go up from there? Use one or more of the following strategies. Now here's where we give our full list of strategies. Also note that I say use one or more. You don't have to use all of these things. That'd be way too overwhelming, actually. And it could be that that a particular student just needs 1 or maybe 2 to really see an increase in their learning, and then, of course, ultimately their grades. So here are the strategies. These are kind of be sort of bullet pointed. We're going to spend a terrible amount of time on each one. Even the first 2 we've already seen. So homework. Treat homework as if they are test questions, right? We saw the details there. Number 2, when you do your reading, do a preview, then ask questions. And then finally, if it's the appropriate type of passage or novel, then do your paraphrasing. Okay. I would even say for STEM courses, still do your preview and your asking questions. Paraphrasing might not make a lot of sense for that. Number 3. Okay, so it might seem like this doesn't need to be said, but I'm not going to make any assumptions. Go to class. When you go, it doesn't mean just go and sit there and fall asleep. That's not what we mean. That's missing the goal, right? So stay fully engaged, take meaningful notes, participate, whatever you can do to invest yourself. When we say meaningful notes, write down little questions, write down, I'm still not quite clear here, right? You can ask your teacher about that later. Something is meaningful to you. Okay, number 4, another possibility, again, you don't necessarily have to do all these things, would be when lecture is done, now it's time to refine your notes, right? Sometimes when we're taking notes, we're just trying to keep up. But now we can look back at them as soon as possible is best. Reread your lecture notes, note any gaps, try and fill them in if you can, and definitely note specific questions that you have when you're looking at your lecture notes. I gotta say, when I was a student, I'm not sure how much I really used my lecture notes. I probably just looked at the example problems in my lecture notes and nothing else. And that was not a good strategy. You're writing this down, actually use it. Don't just file it away somewhere. So that might be really, really helpful. Again, it's like you're noting questions, right? Where are these things? I'm curious. Number 5. Once you've been to class and you refined your notes, now it might be time for the full textbook reading. This will probably apply more to like STEM courses. So at this point, read the textbook in full. So the truth is, if you didn't know already, the lecture is always going to have gaps and holes, right? So students come and they're like, no, you never talked about this topic, but I do see it in the textbook here. You're like, okay, all right, yeah, it is right. My lecture is not meant to be, all you need to know necessarily. However, I would bet a lot of instructors may or may not realize this, that their lecture has gaps and holes. We should be aware of that, and that's okay. It should. It's not a textbook, right? That would be way too much. Okay, so go through and read the book. Read the book in full, including all the graphs, all the diagrams, all the margin comments. Maybe there's a link to a website in the textbook. Go there. Do everything. Go over every example line by line. Read the entire chapter, everything there is to know. Don't expect that your lecture told you everything. It was never meant to. Nobody could stand a lecture like that. Way too long. Okay, that mastery. Now, what does that mean? Again, you might not do all these things. Maybe you realize, you know what, I've got 100% mastery or really, really, really close to it if all I do is read that textbook in full and then I start my homework. And if I was to do all these other things, I guess they would be good. They wouldn't be bad, but I don't know if I'd have more mastery, for this particular class. Maybe I just need to do that homework as test questions, and that's really all I need to do. I don't need a preview. Really, my teacher's great. The lectures are amazing. But then, maybe the same student goes the next semester and, they have a different teacher and they're like, wow, I really cannot follow anything this person is doing. I really need a preview. And maybe it's the teacher, maybe it's just the topic. It's just a difficult topic for them. I really need a preview now and ask questions. Then I can go to lecture and I can probably follow it, right? Same person. So do what you need to do to get 100% mastery. You don't need to do a whole lot more than, if you're doing what you need to do, it might just take 1 or 2 of these things. Now, these 5 are going to serve you or serve a student really, really well. If I flip back a couple of slides, I would venture to say that those 5 strategies would push you all the way up and even into the analysis a little bit. Maybe not the full analysis, but it would push you up into the analysis spectrum of that pyramid. You're really going to understand what you're doing. You're going to memorize the things you need to do. You're going to be able to apply those things if you're tackling those sort of homework questions on your own with all the time, the investment you're going to spend. And then you're going to be thinking about some of the components to some degree if you get 100% mastery here. Okay, so how do we get to those very upper levels of the pyramid? Let me start with this question at the top. I got a lot of questions for us. Have you ever found yourself explaining something you thought you totally understood, only to discover that in the middle of speaking, that you were still confused about some part of it? That ever happened to you? You started explaining something, you really thought you knew it backwards and forwards, and then you started talking about it, and you realized there's still some element of this that I am pretty clear that I'm still confused about. That ever happened to you?
Yes.
Happens to me all the time. Okay, so why do I ask that question? So if you're being tested on something or assessed in any way, do you want to find out in the middle of the assessment that you are still confused about some part of it? That's not the time to find out that you're still confused, right? It would really be better if you did that beforehand. I would like to know if I'm still confused about something before I go give a presentation on it, right? So we're going to do these last three here. Don't worry for non-STEM humanities folks, your time is coming up pretty soon. So number 6, I highly recommend that students teach to an audience. It doesn't have to be every topic, but a little bit. Once they've had plenty of practice, students prepare a short presentation of a topic, have them record it and share it with the class. Bonus, come up with alternate explanations of certain points and or anticipate questions the audience might ask. Wow, okay. Some of our math faculty do this, and I'm motivated to do this semester as well, that they have students record themselves, going through a quiz problem or something like that, maybe even just before the final or as part of their final. Normally you do that? Or you just want to share something?
Yeah, I do that in face-to-face classes. I give this as an extra credit so they don't feel pressured, but I give them a chance to give a 5 to 7 minute presentation. They can either do it on any topic of their choice, as a general math topic, or they can reteach some topics that I taught in class. And if they do it in a different way, then I give them even bonus on that extra credit. So I used to do that for face-to-face.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. And what's gonna how does this tie in? Like, why does the learning so much better when they have to do this? Because as they're preparing that talk, they're probably, most of us are kind of socially conscious or conscientious, and we don't want to look dumb. And so we practice this thing and we're like, oh, you know what? Turns out I don't really understand this topic very well. And so I better, I come to terms with that before I actually give the presentation, if not during. But hey, if it's extra credit, it's okay if it's during. It's not on their actual test.
And to motivate them on top of this, I used to tell them that at some point in your life, in your career, you have to do public speaking, even if it's like in front of 3 people, but at some point you have to do it. So you might as well practice that here. This is a safe environment. Yeah. So we are not going to laugh at anyone. And
there's nothing at stake.
So you can practice that here in class. So
right, you're going to get your extra credit. There's nothing, right? It's just your pride, right? Okay, excellent. And certainly that could apply to non-STEM courses, right? Working in pairs or groups. So, we have a lot of group work and things. So that's gonna push people to the evaluate level, help students gauge their learning, evaluate the way others think, and gives opportunity for discourse. Probably don't need to say a whole lot more about that. How could we push them into the create? So one idea is that they create a mock test. So have students create a test using problems. Hey, they don't have to come up with the problem specifically. Use the textbook or some other resource to create a mock test. Maybe have them do a little bit more than just the questions. Maybe for each question, have them note the concepts that are highlighted in that question. And maybe they could even rate the difficulty level of that question from 1 to 3, like easy, medium, hard, that sort of thing. And so they know if they've covered all of the topics, or at least enough of them from a chapter or something like that. And if they have enough, they have an appropriate number of easy, medium, hard. It's an idea. So an easy way to create a mock test. Then they really have to go through and pick out, difficulty levels and the specifics. Okay, so the big picture behind these is don't just be a recipient of the topics, but actually be a conduit, right? When the things actually have to get processed and then come out, we just go to a whole other level of understanding. Okay, we're getting pretty close to the end. Thanks for hanging in there, everybody. How could we apply Bloom's taxonomy to literature? Again, I won't read through every word here, but I've got some ideas on how Bloom's could apply to reading literature. So we can just start with the understand level. If they could explain, maybe one idea is they could explain why characters behave the way they do in a particular case. know, why is it that this person got angry? Oh, well, it's because of this and this. Well, why would that make them angry? Well, because, okay, so they really understand what's happening. We see the apply there. Yeah, I said I wasn't going to read everything, so I'm going to go to analyze. Analyze, I kind of like to analyze, right? What key events contributed most to the climax of the story? Discuss and compare the significance of each, right? Analyze is breaking things down into the component parts. Evaluate, okay, do you agree or disagree with the main character's actions, right? Defend your opinion. Create, ooh, now, what if we did this? I'm glad, well, I shouldn't say that in this talk, but nobody ever assigned me something like this in a literature class. Write an original short story about the main character or characters, but in a different setting. I never took a writing course, so it's okay. Wow, that would really push me into another level of thinking if I had to do that, right? Okay, just some ideas. I don't know. So we're getting to the end. Where to go from here? Okay, now that we know, about how we can help students learn, we've got some strategies. What can we actually do with this? I would say the biggest thing is simply getting the word out. Tell students the true goals of assignments. Communicate that maybe a little bit better if we don't already. I know I definitely need to communicate the true goals of assignments. I think it's in my syllabus, here's the purpose of homework, and I never say it, I never talk about it again. Do a little bit more to communicate the true goals and communicate some or all of these strategies. You don't necessarily have to tell them about all these strategies. Just one or two of them might be highly effective for a lot of students. Okay, number 2. Get them thinking, right? So now we can create assignments to kind of help them out. Get them thinking with discussion boards or other types of assignments that be similar to those. So for instance, we might ask them, hey, what's the difference between studying and learning? Right? I do that with my students already. At what I think I need to do a little bit better and kind of push them a little bit more to dive in some way or another, but that's what I've been doing the last since spring. At which level of blooms have you been operating so far? I find that's a really helpful question for them. Which level of blooms is needed for an A in this class? I really get some good feedback. Ooh, you know what? I think I need to be at the analyze or evaluate level to get an A in this class. Some students might respond that they need to be at the understand level to get an A, and then I try to challenge them a little bit. Number 3, where to go from here? We kind of go for those other assignments we were just talking about, right? Push them, challenge them to push into higher levels of blooms, maybe creating a video, teaching a topic or a problem, designing a mock test is an idea, or if it's reading analytical, evaluative, or creative writing assignments to push them into those higher levels of blooms. Maybe other folks here have even some other ideas or any thoughts on this before I go to the very last slide.
I can't think of anything that I would add.
Yeah, me neither. I'm trying to think of new things that I can do as well. And, I would say the biggest by far is number 1, just tell them, hey, you might not be interpreting this the way that I am, or, here's some really, really helpful strategies. Think about it. Okay. Well, that's it. Thank you guys so much. If you would like more on these topics, then I highly recommend these 2 books. Okay, so the first one that you see there, Teach Students How to Learn. Quite a bit of those ideas, or some of those ideas I incorporated into this talk here. That's where I got a lot of ideas for Crush Your Math class. And this one, Empower Your Students How to Learn, is from that book. There's way more in that book, obviously. Teach Students How to Learn by Sandra McGuire, really, really good. And then, well, I would recommend Mindset by Carol Dweck. For any human on the planet, definitely teachers and students fall into that category for sure. And then there's my contact information at the bottom. That,
I have
That
one
is all.
final question.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that is, what happened in December that made you have these discoveries, light bulb moments?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. So I went to several conferences in November, December last year, online conferences, right? It was great. And I was in one of the breakout sessions, and I actually forget what exactly the breakout session was on. But it was kind of at one point, I think one of the slides or a couple of slides were tied to teaching students how to learn. That wasn't their main point, but they mentioned it for a moment, and they mentioned that book right there, Teach Students How to Learn. And that just grabbed me, the title, and I went, ooh, and I looked it up. There's action. So that's the teacher version. I think that's the first book she wrote, Teach Students How to Learn. She also wrote a book called Teach Yourself How to Learn, which is directed at college students. And I read both of those, and I was just blown away. So she's got Bloom's taxonomy. That was the first time I've ever seen it that I know of. Many of the strategies are from that book, and some other ideas that were learning versus studying, and where students can get confused about that stuff.
That's wonderful.
So,
Thank you for
yeah.
sharing with us.
Really,
Thank
really
you
helpful.
very much.
Ryan,
Yes.
could you possibly share some of these slides so I can use to show my students?
Share them with you? Absolutely. I can email you this
Okay,
PDF.
that'll be great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
May I add my name and address, email address to the chat?
Absolutely. Please do. Yeah, happy to share. This video will be up somehow on our professional development, but yeah, just having the slides is maybe a little bit more.
And I have a PowerPoint about how brain learns. So I'll email you that, and maybe when you do your future presentation, maybe you can use that and
incorporate some of those things.
Yeah.
So those are from those are from your talks with students.
That's what I
When we're
show.
back on campus?
During my workshop to students. Yes.
Okay. That would be awesome.
Nice meeting all of you.
All right. Thank you so much for this. Very informative. It was really nice.
Absolutely. Thank you very, very much.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, look at Melissa.
Oh, yeah. Is that Jack or Austin?
This is Austin, who woke up early from his nap.
Oh, right.
You probably heard the ice cream truck.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Got to run.
Bye. Thanks, Ryan.
All right. Happy first
Have a nice
day.
weekend.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Have a great weekend.